Welcome to 80s TV Ladies, where we look back in order to leap forward. Here are your hosts, Susan+lambert+hatem and Sharon+johnson.
Hello, I'm Susan.
And I'm Sharon. It's interesting how influential posters were in the 80s. Did you have any posters on your wall in the 80s? I don't think I did. We were living in military housing primarily, and my mom was always kind of wary of us putting stuff up. If I did have any, and then when I went out on my own, I don't know what I had on my wall. Haven't really thought about it for a long time.
It was such a thing. Certainly early on, I remember when my sister and I shared a room, we would often fight over what, like, pull out from Teen Beat we would put up, because it would have one young star on one side and another on the other side. And one of the bigger fights we had was the Hardy Boys, and Shaun Cassidy was on one side and Parker Stevenson was on the other. And I was a total Parker Stevenson over Shaun Cassidy, and my sister was a Shaun Cassidy. And so we literally flipped it every week.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how did you resolve this dilemma, for goodness sake? Did you go buy another magazine?
No, and we didn't get them. Yeah. So, and again, I had single mom, and we didn't have a lot of disposable income. We had plenty, for our life. We wouldn't have a Teen Beat every week. It would be picking up a special one because there was a special pullout like the Hardy Boys.
I was thinking maybe use your babysitting money to get another one or something like that.
Yes. Or yes, that's true. But yeah, so we compromised on that, and it was half and half. Then when I got my own room, it was definitely Star Wars was probably a poster, but it wouldn't have been a true like movie poster. It would have been, again, another sort of pullout from a magazine, and Harrison Ford, I remember. But I would mostly put up pictures. I remember I had this little sort of corner. I didn't put up a lot all over the walls. I had a little corner that were like cutouts from magazines. And that's what I would put up on my walls when I was home. When I went to college, I feel like I started putting up movie posters then, because you could get them. Like every once in a while, you could walk up to a movie theater and be like, hey, do you have any extra posters? And then whatever posters they'd taken down, if the employees didn't take them, you could get them. And yeah.
I never would have thought of that. But seriously, I, for the life of me, could not begin to tell you what, if anything, I had on the wall. There probably were things, and my mother would probably remember very clearly because she's much better about that stuff than I am. But I have no idea. But I'm going to have to ask her about it next time.
Well, and it's so funny because our walls were pretty bare at home. Like it wasn't the decorating that life has now, right? I have everything up on the wall. I also used to cut out magazine words, and I had a clipboard, and I would make a clipboard like every few years of different inspiring. It was like a little like vision board for my clipboard. The Fall Guy as a TV show is not technically an 80s TV ladies show, but our next guest is most definitely an 80s TV lady and an 80s poster lady, Heather Thomas.
Heather Thomas was born in Connecticut and raised in Santa Monica, California. She had an extraordinary influence on popular culture in the 1980s. She's an actress, writer, and activist, but may have been most famous in the 1980s for her pink bikini poster, may be the best-selling pinup poster of all time. She appeared in several 80s shows, including BJ and the Bear, Love Boat, and TJ Hooker, as well as movies and TV miniseries, including Ford, The Man in the Machine.
She also got famous playing stuntwoman Jody Banks on 112 episodes of The Fall Guy. The Fall Guy was an ABC action show created by Glenn Larson, which ran for 5 seasons from November 4th, 1981 to May 2nd, 1986.
The Fall Guy TV show inspired countless posters, a board game, a 1984 video game, and of course, most recently, 2024's The Fall Guy movie starring Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt.
And has a cameo by Lee Majors and Heather Thomas. Now, Lee Majors, he was one of the biggest television stars because of The $6 Million Man and The Bionic Woman. So he was the star of The Fall Guy as stuntman Colt Seavers, who moonlights on the side as a bounty hunter using his stunt skills to catch bail skippers. A perfect 80s idea.
It also starred Douglas Barr, who many of you may recall later was on Designing Women, another show we've talked about. He played Lee Major's nephew and sidekick, Howie Munson. And Heather Thomas was his associate/assistant and a newbie stuntwoman, Jody Banks. In the first season, Joanne Flug played Samantha Big Jack as the bail bondswoman who hires them. Then Marky Post came in to play a similar female bond dealer for the rest of the run.
Now it had lots of movie stunt action, which was kind of cool as a kid and that was interested in filmmaking. Heather Thomas left acting after doing a bunch of stuff. She left acting in the late 80s, apparently due to some stalker issues and because she had a family and wanted to focus on that. And she's recently returned to acting, but she's always been a longtime writer, novelist, political activist, organizer, and fundraiser.
So we are thrilled to welcome Ms. Heather Thomas to 80s TV Ladies.
Hello, how are you?
We're great and so looking forward to this conversation today.
It's a kind of a crazy time, and I'm just wondering what you're doing to find joy these days.
Well, I've been mainlining grandchildren, a lot of that. I had 4 school programs, 1 community theater play, and actually 2 community theater plays.
Because now is the time for children pageants and holiday pageants.
Yeah. I have them from 12 down to 7.
That sounds fantastic.
Are your family close or are they far?
They all live within 5 minutes away. We have a big family, big happy family.
That's awesome.
3 daughters, 2 of them have families.
That's wonderful. That's really wonderful.
Yeah.
That is very delightful. You know, I've been watching some of your interviews and you clearly love words and storytelling. And I am very curious about where that love of story came from.
I think as a child, I was bored. So I had books and television was sort of more of a communal event because we had a commonality in that we'd watch one of the 3 stations available. And usually there was one big kid program a month, you know, whether it was on Disney or Wizard of Oz, something like that, you know, or the Charlie Brown Christmas special. And so it wasn't so much TV. It was more books. I read a lot as a kid. And I had a big fantasy life, too.
Did you do any writing as a result of your reading?
Sure. Always as a kid. I always did.
And then you ended up going to UCLA Theater and Film School.
Yeah.
Both. I'm curious about that.
You couldn't enter as a film major. The film major was primarily in those days, back in the Mesozoic age when I was going to school, it was primarily a graduate program. In my junior year, I applied to the film program because it was only 2 years for undergraduates. And then I got in. They let 14 people in. I got into the film school there.
When you went to college, was it always your intent to study film and theater and writing?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I wanted to be part of story. And theater, you know, you run into the proscenium walls, you know, you can't break the way you can with film. You can't flash cut. You can't, you know, extend past whatever's possible on stage.
That's such an interesting point. We spoke with Dorothy Lyman on another episode, and she talked about that too, that you can kind of put the camera anywhere.
Yeah.
And a lot of the directors that we've talked to, that's been the real appeal of television and film.
Yeah, well, there's an intimacy you can't get with theater too. And that you're right there with the character and it's live. So it's just such different mediums, but you can be inside the character in film.
Yeah. So I'm curious about what it felt like to break in at that time.
Well, you know, you're in theater class, you're in acting class, or you're studying Chekov, or you're doing, you know, something esoteric, waiting for Godot or something. And then you do 80s tits-and-ass, you know, they went that away. That's what help me. It was, you caught on pretty quick what it was about and how you maneuvered and where the power lay, et cetera, et cetera.
I'd love to just sort of talk about some of the shows that you were on, like BJ and the Bear. How was working with the bear?
I didn't work with the monkey much. I ended up working on an episode of Fall Guy with that Clyde monkey from Every Which Way But Loose, that Clint Eastwood movie.
Yeah.
I worked with an orangutan on that, and that guy was scary. Like, he thought it was funny to grab my boob, and I just kept thinking he's going to rip it off any minute. But the chimp I didn't work with.
Okay. Well, good, because if they were going to sexually harass you.
I worked with Greg Evagon a lot, and I adored him.
Was BJ and the Bear the first time you worked with Glenn Larson?
Yeah. And because of that, I got Fall Guy. He called me in for Fall Guy because I ended up doing a 2-part episode that was kind of a pilot that didn't get picked up with Rebecca Reynolds. We did one. It was called Girls on the Hollywood High or something. We were women detectives, and we were researching a case. And I was the straight man, and she was the funny one.
Well, I would have loved that show. I wish that had gone.
Yeah, that would have been a good show.
So clearly you worked, like, Glenn Larson wanted to work with you and find the right thing. So what was it like? We heard he's a little bit crazy.
All of them are crazy. You're not going to find a normal one. Not in those days. Everybody was nuts. And they still are. Glenn was great. He started out as like a boy band singer guy and with the 4 Preps. And so everything was breaking the song. You'd be walking along and someone would start singing. I can't sing for hell. I did not sing, but everybody sang.
That's so great. I love that. Glenn Larson is a musical theater guy.
Yeah, he's a very musical guy. And so there was a lot of musical stuff. There was a lot of celebrities, and everywhere was limousines and stuff like that. It was funny. It was a funny time.
Working with Lee Majors, coming off of like one of the biggest stars in television.
Yeah, I get over intimidation really fast. It's just another dude.
What did you think about your character, Jody?
My character, for a while there, they said, "Can you smile more?" And I was just thinking, oh, brother, here we go. Not them, but, the network was worried that I wasn't likable because I didn't smile enough. And then they put me in a bikini, and it made up for me not smiling enough, I guess.
I've been watching some of the Fall Guy episodes, in particular, looking for what I like to call Jody-centric episodes. But one of the things I really liked about Jody and the way that they wrote her is that she was literally just, one of the guys. I mean, they really weren't trying to, sort of pat her on the head and say, "Oh, you're just a girl. Please stand over to the corner while the men take care of things." Yes, you could have had more to do and on a regular basis, but when there were things to do, you had things to do, which was great, I thought.
Yeah, a lot of the times I was just a slave, but other times I would participate in the stunt, or I would be part of the stunt team, which is really important. You need your backup people.
Did they let you do a number of your own stunts in the Fall Guy, or did you have a stunt double?
Oh, I had a stunt double, Debbie, but I did the fighting, and they hung me from a crane once. I was supposed to be parachuting. They had me spread eagled over the entrance to Fox. It was terrible.
Oh, my goodness.
We hung from a helicopter skid once. What else did we do? I didn't do any of the fire, and it was mostly this fighting I would do, the stunt fighting.
Did you ever get injured?
No.
Okay.
No. Well, once or twice there were some, Lee Majors almost broke my nose once. There was like a cue. I was here and he was here with our heads, and my head was supposed to pop up than his. And he went on my cue, so he bumped my nose.
He tried to take you out.
Yeah, he said, "Get her close up quick before it swells." So we used to work like that.
Was he a fun guy to work with?
Yeah, he was funny. He was very jaded, and he'd keep the set closed because he didn't want a lot of looky-loos. That way we were all very comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You know how sometimes they bring people on set?
Yeah.
Doug Barr lived in the same building as Betty Davis at the time. She wanted to bring her grandson, and Lee said no.
Oh, did he really? Oh, my.
Yeah. And Doug had to answer to Betty.
Poor guy.
I thought that was funny.
That is funny. And how was it working with Doug? Where you guys were kind of...
Doug was like my brother. I love Doug. I still talk to Doug all the time. I talk to Lee every now and then, but I talk to Doug a lot.
Well, it felt like you guys were in a similar place, right? You had come up through some of the same stuff, and now you were on this show that was a hit show. And so it felt like it was the acting version of the characters in the show in some ways.
Yeah.
But I was wondering if you worked much with Joanne Flug or Marky Post.
Yeah, I'd worked with both of them. I miss Marky. Poor Marky. Yeah, Marky was great. Joanne was great. I like everybody.
But I was thinking of the episode Hell on Wheels, where you are a roller derby woman, and you did the slide into the split.
Oh yeah, I did all that stunt because I was really good on skates, and then I went and I learned how to do roller derby, which is pretty easy if you can skate. Because I lived in Marina del Rey Peninsula, and we went everywhere on roller skates. It was at Linda Ronstadt roller rink time. I trained one afternoon with LA Thunderbirds, and they taught me how to, when you're jamming and you're getting somebody behind you, they're holding on to your shorts. So you can't knock them down, but they make it look like, so you're faking like you're falling backwards and stuff, but you're actually hanging on to their shorts.
Oh my God.
And Ralphie Valderas, he showed how to break my back on the rail. He picked me up and went like this, and I go, it was fun.
That sounds terrifying.
But roller derby is really fun. But I didn't do roller derby after that.
Thought maybe you pick it up as a hobby, No,
the show won't let you. The show was really strict in what I could do in my spare time.
Oh, really? They said you can't do this and you can't do that.
Yeah. They were like, you're going roller skating? What if you break an ankle,
Oh, all right. Well, did you have other favorite stunts or things you got to do because of the show?
I love doing the horse stuff because movie horses are a riot. Like when you play polo, it's like having a Ferrari. Well, a movie horse is like a machine. The truck with the camera on it goes, your horse goes. So you could be not even holding the reins, and the horse would go perfectly anywhere it needed to be.
That's so interesting. Wow.
Yeah. It makes you look like a great rider. Now, I did a movie in Australia where I had to write English, and they actually needed me to ride in that one. And they trained me with these crazy Australian stuntmen that every single one of them thought they were the man from Snowy River. So they would take you with no saddle and make you gallop downhill in the forest, avoiding trees. It was crazy.
My goodness.
But it was one way to teach you. It's like throwing the kid in the water to teach him how to swim.
That's amazing. Again, the 80s felt like, we're going to be very careful with our stars. Sometimes. Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes they were. Sometimes they weren't.
A few minutes ago, you mentioned a stunt performer named Debbie. By any chance, was that Debbie Evans-Levitt? Different
No.
Debbie.
No, I'm trying to remember her last name. It's so
That's
long
okay.
ago.
I only asked because Debbie Evans-Levitt was a guest on our show. She was fantastic. So anyway, just thought might be a happy coincidence.
Mm-mm. No, I'm trying to remember her name. I feel like a horrible person.
Well, like you said, it was a while ago.
It was a while ago.
Yeah.
I'm going to look her up on my phone 40 years ago.
We should organize our phone by decade. No, I'm
yeah, that would be great.
I met her around 85.
I'm doing this with no glasses.
That's an impressive stunt.
Indeed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to find it. Wait, I'm going to tell you her last name because I'm really... Who was...
I know. I was trying to Google it. Here's the problem, because it's AI. They were telling me that Jody Banks was your stunt woman.
I know. This is horrible. They just keep telling me it's me.
Welcome to the future.
Yeah. And then there's something about my net worth, which is frightening. So,
the dumbest timeline.
yes.
Oh, hold on a second. I think I have it.
AI only has what they program into it.
I think I have it. Debbie Porter?
Yes.
Yo!
Porter. You win the Frigidaire. Yeah. Debbie Porter. Oh, my God. Yeah. She was great.
Oh,
You get all the
fantastic.
flames and falling. I've got 2 dogs. Now they want to get out of my office. First, they were crying to get in.
Okay, we need to take a break, and we'll be right back with the rest of our fantastic conversation with the amazing Heather Thomas. And we're back with more Heather Thomas.
Any favorite directors that you worked with on The Fall Guy or beyond? I saw that Ted Lang directed a couple.
Yeah, Ted was great. I remember when Reagan got elected that day and we all went, oh, heaven help us. But it's nothing like now. We thought it was bad then.
Yeah.
Bruce Bilson was great. Dan, you're like killing me here.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, 40 years. I'm supposed to remember these people. I love Bruce Bilson. And then his son ended up being a professor at USC Film School for my daughter, my youngest.
Oh,
Yeah.
for you, what makes for a good director? What did you like? What did you want from a director?
Well, on Fall Guy, the director was basically Lee Majors said, I want to go home at 5. You know, that's what made a good director for him, to get it all done. For me, a good director was someone that gave direction.
Yeah.
You know, I knew my character and he'd say, a good director would be, okay, I'm probably going to need to cut to you at this point. You know, sometimes when they explain what they're going to do with the film, that helps for me.
The poster, right? Was it before the show or during the show?
No, it was during the show.
It was during the show.
Yeah, I had Rogers and Cowan publicists, and they said, okay, the show's a hit. You got to do a poster. And I went, what? You know, they were booking me to do all these photo shoots and go to these events. And then they said, you're doing a poster. And I did it, and it sold really big.
It's one of the top, maybe the top. I mean, it's hard to tell
I think
now.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
It's the highest selling in the world. I outsold Farrah, yeah.
And were you sitting around going, okay, I just passed Heather Locklear. Now I got to head for Farrah. Like
I didn't need to pass Heather Locklear. She didn't even come till like later. I wasn't even thinking about her at that point. I was just happy because I was going, I can buy a house. You know, that was what I was doing. I was thrilled.
Yeah, it was to the time, and people still love those. Like those are still, you know, for sale. Do you still get any money?
I'm vintage now. You know, they never give you the money after a certain amount of time. All these people, they license me, these phony companies, and they sell my likeness. You know, they sell the rights to have a picture of me somewhere.
That's got to be frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you go after these guys, it's like whack-a-mole, you know, another one's going to pop up. I remember being, you know, in the 90s, they were taking pictures with giant life-size cutouts, you know, boardwalks and things like that. You take a picture with a giant life-size Eddie Murphy and a giant life-size Heather Thomas. One time, I think I was on a date with my husband in New Orleans, and as a joke, he stole the Heather cutout. And the guy and he gave it to our limo driver who was running away with it. And the guy is chasing him down the street going, bring Heather back. I was laughing. Really funny. And my husband goes, nope, copyright infringement. But we had to give it back at the end of the day if we wanted to go, unless we wanted to take him to court, you know. I didn't.
Still sounds like a fun moment.
But I was everything but a toilet seat cover and an ashtray. It probably was an ashtray. I found myself on a lighter in Mexico. I was a peachy notebook. I was a puzzle. I was a lot of notebook covers for kids. And then I was a pillow.
All
That
right.
sounds scary. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you start to separate yourself from the image?
Well, it's work. It's my
it's work.
living, it's
Yeah.
work. And that's how I looked at my body even then, like, this is my living. This is what needs to be healthy. This is what needs to be, exercised and starved. And
It's tough. It was tough in the 80s to be on television as a woman.
yeah, because you're naked half the time. They didn't have, all the special effects that could soften. You couldn't have an ounce of cellulite or anything. You had to be
screen perfect.
Yeah, you couldn't fix it.
And so, did you feel that pressure? Did you feel like, oh my God, I have to do this? Or did it, you seem like you were athletic?
It was part of the gig,
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh my God, I can't eat ice cream. I didn't care. I was happy to make the money. I was grateful every day. I was making more money than I ever made in my life. I was happy. I was a kid.
Yeah. And so what did it mean to be that recognized that young? Like, I assume you went out and people were like, oh my God.
You were like objectified to a certain amount, but that was what you were selling. So I wasn't, they don't think of me as a person. I never did any of that stuff.
Mm.
I was pretty tough in those days. That's what I'm selling. That's what I do. And they talk about you like you're a thing, but you really didn't. It didn't like hurt my feelings. I kind of knew the gig.
And so can we talk about a couple of your movies?
Sure. Which ones? They were
Speaking of knew the gig,
yeah.
I think I kind of have to talk about Zapped if we can.
Yeah.
Because it's one of the quintessential 80s movies where it's basically, teen sex comedy, borderline sexual harassment.
Yeah. It was very much sexual harassment. I did that before Fall Guy. I remember I did that, and again, I didn't think anything of it. They tried to get me topless, and my contract said, And so they used a body double, but they have a disclaimer at the end.
Mm. Was it fun to do, or was it just, this is a job?
It was fun until they tried to get me topless. They said, we're going to get a girl with ugliest tits in town. I said, fine, as long as my head's not on them. And they did morph a picture of me with somebody else's boobs. But there's a big disclaimer at the end of the movie that it's not my tits.
I'm glad you got that, because...
Yeah. And I did a People magazine about it. I did a ton of publicity about it, to keep the network happy that it wasn't my boobs.
Yeah, because the network cared for the show.
Yeah, they don't want you doing something trampy.
And you did a lot of press and appearances. I revisited a David Letterman appearance you made.
Oh, that was fun.
That was fun.
So much fun. That was fun. And Bobby Morton, I hung out with his producer, and we were laughing because we had this book. I don't know how we got a hold of it. I think it was Bobby's. It was about the Gabor sisters. And we were all talking about Gabor lore. And like the new Gabors were the Kardashians. Yes. They married well. They had all these gowns and all these things they sold. And they were like a sister act in Vegas for a while. And they had a mom that just kept making money. And she owned like 3 blocks in downtown Manhattan. They were just funny. They would just, marry and divorce and marry and divorce. And
so they were the Kardashians.
Like the Kardashians. Yeah, they were just like the Kardashians. They got the sister plastic surgery the minute she hit New York.
Oh, my gosh.
So what was David Letterman like as a talk show host?
Lovely and normal. They're all lovely and normal.
Well, that's great.
Well, I thought that you showed a lot of spunk, and you made for a very interesting guest because of your wordsmithness. I think David Letterman asked about your poster and why you did it, and you said it was an actualization of a misdirected need for acceptance. And you kind of threw him with that answer.
Well, why not? That's kind of what it is. And it was, you could say that's what it is. It was basically furthering my Q quality.
Yeah. I think you were messing with him, but the way you did it, I think also threw him.
Well, everybody was so analyzing in those days that, that there must be a psychological issue if you do something like that.
These days it seems on talk shows that it's almost scripted what they're going to talk to the host about. Was that the case when you were on David, on Letterman's show?
No, they always ask you questions so he can know what you're doing. The guy's got to do, 50 people a week? And, so they're going to pre-interview you to find out if you're interesting enough to be on the show, number one, and number two, what you have going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they can get a clip of it,
Sure.
I was in a really bad movie when I did Letterman. I was laughing so hard about it. I was still shooting it. I think
it was Cyclone.
Yeah, it was so bad.
And you were like,
no. I was shooting I was shooting something in Montreal at the time. I was like 4 movies ahead of that. But Cyclone was my divorce movie.
That's what you say on the show. And I was like, this is insane. Like, talk shows were so much more fun in the 80s because people just said things.
Yeah, you said what it really was. It was my divorce movie. I came back from Sri Lanka making this other movie, a German mini series. I went over there, and that way I could get a divorce and hide. There's no place better to hide than the jungle in Sri Lanka. And so I came back, and my soon-to-be ex-husband had contested some of my money, and so it was frozen. So I said, I need money. And my friend Mark said, well, why don't you do one of the crappy movies across the hall? They're always making movies. I walked over there. I told them my price, and they met it. And I was in their crappy movie.
That's amazing.
It was, I took so much of their money out of the budget that they used the craft service guy for my stuntman, doing the motorcycle stuff. And there's a couple of times when there's a hairy knuckles revving the
That's awesome.
They even took my bra and put it on the guy's stuff.
Oh my God.
So low budget. It was low budget.
But they had Heather Thomas.
That's right.
And Martin Landau was in it. There was
That's
all
right.
Hey, you had to get the card to get the insurance. You had to have so much money every year.
Yep. For sure. And so I'm also curious about, I watched some of the Ford, the Man and the Machine TV movie or TV series. It was like a miniseries. You're great. It's something you don't get to do as much, the period and all that stuff.
I know, that was fun.
Yeah. I'm just curious about working with Cliff Robertson, what that was like, and Hope Lang.
Hope Lang was a scream. She was a scream. She's one of the funniest people I ever met. Rest her soul. I loved her. Cliff Robertson, he would help me with my acting. He was good. He would tell me. He was a little bossy, but I respect that in old guys. They like to do that.
Mm-hmm.
He was a good actor. Damn, he was a good actor. It was cold AF there. I mean, it was so cold. I was in Montreal in the countryside, and I thought I knew cold, but I didn't know cold until I was out there. It was we were shooting in 27 below. The guys from Quebec were not friendly. The Montreal people were not that friendly. They were just busy trying to survive. And the grips, all you saw were 2 little red eyes and a scarf. And yet they were pulling cable with their bare hands. And I remember I had this one scene where I'm in a riding habit, and I'm leading a horse and talking with Cliff. And Cliff kept blowing the shot because he was scared the horse was going to eat his toupee or something. And the costumer didn't think. He gave me real riding boots that were my size, and all I could wear with them was a nylon sock. And so my feet were walking through slush. And the director said, well, just raise your hand if you go numb, and we'll get you to the hospital or something.
Oh, gee.
And I remember at the end of the shot, I said, I can't feel my feet anymore. And so they took me and they plunged my feet into ice water. And I remember screaming. They put them in ice water to warm them up. Because when you have frostbite, you can't put them in hot water. And I didn't lose any toes. I got to keep them.
See, there you go. The 80s. We won't let you do anything fun, but God forbid, on set, we're going to take off your toes.
We might kill you, but we don't mean to.
I want to talk about your mom a little bit, if that's okay.
My mom is fabulous.
She sounds fabulous. I was Gladdy Writer. What a name. She sounds
Gladdy Lou.
Gladdy Lou.
Yeah, she was a riot.
Is that love of words or just that sort of, I don't know, interesting layer? What do you think she gave you?
I think what she gave me was a sense of not conforming. More, don't be what people expect. She was enthusiastic. If she wanted something some way, she figured out how to get it. Very determined when it came to her students. She wouldn't give up on any of them. She was a special ed teacher for 36 years. And she would do things like on her own dime, her own time, she would teach parents at night what their rights were as far as their children's rights were as a student in the state of California, and what they could ask for their student, and how to tell if the teachers were teaching them correctly. And I would have given up the ghost after 2 days in her classroom, but she just handled it all. She could multitask. Each kid was different and had different needs. And she'd say, your job is to do this thing. You need to stop chewing that. And she let kids chew gum. And there would be kids that had emotional disabilities, and there were kids that had physical disabilities, and there were kids that had perceptual disabilities, and they were all different, and she would handle it all at once. She was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. And she'd have like 36 kids in her class, or 40 kids sometimes, because at one point the conventional thinking in California was let's make mega schools with mega classrooms, and then nobody got any attention.
Yeah. And what do you think you gave to your daughters?
To my daughters, discipline as far as being kind to everybody, treating everybody with deep respect, and reading a room. I know I'm good at teaching my kids that you have wealth or privilege comes responsibility to give back. That's very important to me. My children also know how to set limits and not blow it, go overboard. They know they're loved. They got that from me.
That's great.
Marvelous.
I mean, we're fascinated by sort of that mother-daughter stuff, which comes up in some of the shows.
Yeah, I'm very eccentric as a mother. I would do weird things. Yeah.
Like what?
Oh, we do solstice dinner where we wear crowns, different types of hats that we have made, and you have to offer something to the group, something that you created, whether it's a painting or a song or a story or something you discovered. You have to offer something that night, and then we all tell fortunes. I'm that kind of a mom. I'm a weird mom. My youngest daughter, on her birthday, every morning, my husband and I would be wearing big rubber masks to wake her up. We're a little bit weird as a family. I would put like soap in the mold of dolls' hands on their soap in the morning. I'm weird and eccentric, but I think that keeps it interesting. And we have good traditions. You want to have traditions. When I came on the scene, my husband and his ex-wife were fighting, and the kids were caught in the middle, and I came in and cut that out.
That's good. I'm a step parent and a parent, and I love when everyone prioritizes the kids.
Yeah, you got to. You can't take anything personally when you're a step parent. You're going to be the outlet for the stuff they can't tell the other parents. They're going to put some anger on you, some resentment on you. And my biggest thing was never criticize either parent, because that's like telling a kid half of you is wrong. they can't separate themselves at an early age. And it puts pressure on them to, either have to defend their parent or they feel they're betraying their parent. It's just weird. So I just didn't personalize anything and just was along for the ride and wanted to be just loving and accepting.
That is amazing. And it's so interesting. Where did that come from? Is that from your mom? Is that from your own family?
No, my parents didn't divorce till I was like 18, 20, 19 maybe. 18 or 19. They didn't divorce until then. I just saw what was going on and then figured out the most healthy way that I was going to exist in the relationship, that I was going to be there. I didn't want to be one more thing on these kids.
Wow.
And then the other thing was we needed to set some consistency. My husband tends to be a giant walking yes, and it's not healthy for kids. They need boundaries. And I was the mean mom that would say, no, you're not going to this person's house unless the parents are home because it's disrespectful or, stuff like that.
Yeah. I remember when I started dating my now husband and his kids were very little and I was like, oh, I don't know about this. And I was looking for like the book on how to be a, step parent or how to manage blended families. And at the time, this was now 20 years ago, there wasn't a lot out there. There's a little more now and there's podcasts all over the place, but it was an interesting sort of like, okay, well, I'm stepping into a world that exists. Right. So how do I build a place and guidelines, but also honor what's existing?
Yeah, because you have to honor what's existing. But if what's existing is really unhealthy, you have to say, well, what am I going to bring to this that makes it healthy so I don't go crazy and they don't get hurt?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting to navigate modern relationships.
Yeah.
Speaking of modern relationships, can we talk a little bit about your activism? What sparked for you? I mean, you've been very politically active and very interested in the world and how it works for a long time. When did that start?
I've always been that, though. Ever since they said you can't climb the tree, the boys can. I was probably a feminist first, and I have a great love of nature. I also could see where the environment is everything. It's the air you breathe. It's like everybody thinks the environment's out there. It's right here. So I was very interested in conserving nature. From seeing the discrepancies between the sexes, I gravitated to civil rights things. I think I did my first march in high school with Dolores Huerta was there. I don't think Caesar was there, but it was for UFW. Farm workers.
Was that the kind of thing your parents were doing? That your parents were involved
parents
with?
were really into Bobby Kennedy. They were there the night he got shot.
Oh my goodness!
Oh my God!
They were Democrats. I come from a big Democrat family, so
LA Cafe is what I was reading about. It was called Regime Change Cafe. How did that start?
I got together with some guys that were progressive, but also embedded in the Democratic Party, but more the progressive wing. And what I was seeing happening in Hollywood, because, I got thrown into this kind of trophy wife, donor class thing when I married Skip. I blame monotheism. Everybody kept like gravitating to the one big thing, that election. There would be one guy who would say, I have GPSs and we're going to track voters that way. And we're going to, make sure everybody votes. And there would be one guy. And I'd say, well, what about all the grassroots or the local league, blah, 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 blah. But they would always want to do it from a big national level. I saw that happening and we kept losing. And I started saying, well, let's identify local issues and what's going on. But it takes there are a million different paths up the mountain that you have to get there. So I started working with putting baby grassroots groups, these effective grassroots groups, together with foundations and funds. and seasoned activists. So we started doing this kind of linking salon where, young groups would present what they were about and people would come and advise them. It was kind of just like getting them connected to people. And sometimes they'd say, well, you should probably roll into this group and be part of them and not be your own thing. Or some of them would say, this is great. I'm going to fund you. We'll get you some money for this effort. And we had everybody present. Everybody came through. Move On first came in through there. We got critical early funding for Crew.
Nice.
Which was a really funny story. At that time, Gail Zappa was still alive. It was at a time when who was that guy? Tom DeLay was, doing all this cheesy stuff, and they had no ethics in Congress, probably how they're going to have it now. And everybody was faking like they were conservative. There were like tumbleweeds blowing through Henry Waxman and Barbara Boxer's office. And everybody was faking like they were these big conservatives. And they could not get enough money to challenge the ethics. And they were all former federal prosecutors. They knew where everybody was breaking the law, but they couldn't get any traction. And the Democrats were too scared to get on board with them. They needed critical early funding. And Gail goes, oh, I know where I can get them $1 million. And I said, really, where? She said, Larry Flynt. I went, really? And I said, okay. And she goes, have Melanie Sloan. We're going to have a lunch. So we had lunch at the Four Seasons. And I don't think I told Melanie until he rolled in like Jabba the Hutt in his wheelchair. She like freaked out. And I'm just holding her dress down on her chair. Like, take the money. It was just, take the money. Take the money, honey. And because of that, they were able to bring up all this stuff that culminated in that Foster guy who was molesting the pages, and the Republicans knew. And then Nancy Pelosi was able to say culture of corruption. But none of that was started by the Democratic Party. That was started by Crew. But it was critical early funding. And because of that, Nancy Pelosi became the speaker. So there's all these funny little ways to get up the mountain.
I love that.
Critical early funding by Larry Flynt. Well, he was sick of them. He was sick of them hounding Bill Clinton about a blowjob. So he was looking to discredit other people, to say they're just as bad. Who are they to point fingers? I can dig it.
That strategy kind of worked for a while too, because there were a number of Republicans whose misdeeds were brought to light and they were sent on their way. But
there's always more Republicans. They're much more. They're completely audacious.
Mm-hmm.
We are so timid as Democrats.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, yeah, often comes from a place of reason. Thoughtfulness.
It comes from being thoughtful and kind and having empathy.
Now, did you help Fair Fight in the early days?
A million people helped Fair Fight. Yeah, I got what money I could for Stacey. I also created Don't Get Purged for her. A little too late because Kemp really purged a lot of people off the voter rolls.
I'm from Georgia, so I was follow Georgia politics.
I'm convinced she won that year. I still am.
Yeah.
Karen Guarawargo, I bet she knew. They didn't even have line of custody of the voting machines, or the voter rolls. But there were so many people that were turned away from the polls that year.
Yeah, absolutely. And then even this last election was very scary. There were like 67 bomb threats called into polling places.
Something went down. I can go the conspiracy theory way and say, how come Elon pulled all of a sudden 13 satellites went down, and the bullet votes and go the way of that. But I think the main problem was that we have ignored being in media And we ignored the fact that media was owned by people that wanted Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're in a really weird, tough time.
It's going to get worse.
Yes.
It's going to get a lot worse before
yeah.
it gets better. Woo! Yeah.
But we can do it.
And we're going to have to handle it, and we will.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
it's going to get worse. And the sad thing is people are going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And there's going to be all sorts of people hurt. And it's just, you think, who are these guys? They think, I'm going to own the libs. And then they find out they're going to have to pay for their parents the rest of their lives because the social safety net is gone or this is gone. And there's going to be hell to pay. We'll see. I think these guys are just going to rape the money.
Yeah.
They're going to rape the money. They're going to rape the countryside. They're going to give away our natural resources.
Yeah.
They're going to sell the farm. It's all the new world order of the tech bros.
Yeah.
I mean, if you read any of the Curtis Yarvin stuff that Peter Thiel ascribes to, it's crazy town.
Yeah.
It's like these nouveau riche 13-year-olds all got together and decided to design a world where they're all little kings. It's hysterical.
Are you staying on Twitter or are you going to Blue Sky or Spoutable?
I'm on both. I'm on both. I haven't done social media for 3 days, and people are like in my DMs going, "Are you dead? Are you alive?" It's so funny. Usually I'm on there a lot.
Yeah. But it's kind of good to have that. I did that after the election and it was good. It was good.
Yeah. I stayed after the election because I wanted to give people hope and let them know I'm still here. I'm fighting till the last breath comes out of me. And don't concede in advance.
Nope.
And don't, all that on tyranny advice. I'm into it. But I had a lot of grandkids stuff the past couple of days. So I haven't been able to say, oh, Kimberly Guilfoyle should be an ambassador.
It's insane. It's insane. Well, I'm glad that you're having the grandkid thing. Now, also, I'm curious about your fly fishing and how you got into that.
Oh, fly fishing. I love it. My husband would have dumped me if I couldn't fish. That's his thing. Gip Brittenham is one of the best fly fishermen in the world. He has records all over the country, all over the continents. He even fished for our nation. He was on 2 world champion teams. I bet you didn't know we had a world champion.
I did not.
No idea. Had no idea.
I mean, there is a world fishing contest, fly fishing, and he was on the U.S. team twice.
How do they rate it? What are you trying to do?
They divide an area. Like they've gone to Italy. I'm like, where's the big fly fishing in Italy? And do they have enough to divide into beats so that everybody can compete fairly? No, but they do it anyway. They've done Argentina, and I think they fish all over the world. Just depends on which country is up that year. I was in a fishing contest. I'm one of the few women that was on a winning team in the Jackson Hole one fly, which is really, really fun.
Yeah.
You get one fly in the morning. You pick your fly in the morning. If you lose your fly, you're out. So you only get the points you score with that fly.
Oh, congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What is it about fly fishing that you find so appealing?
You can't think about anything else but fly fishing when you're fishing. You have to think about the entomology. You have to think about the water. You have to think the hydraulics of it. You have to think about the weather. You have to think about what the moonlight was the night before, what the cloud cover is that day. You have to read what the fish are taking and match it. And I fish barbless, so that gives you less than a second to catch your fish. It's not bait, it's a fly, so they're not going to swallow it. You fish with a worm, you're going to get the fish no matter what, and you're probably going to kill the fish. I catch and release.
You have the fly, and it's just if the fish grabs it? Okay. And so it doesn't hook them?
Yeah, it hooks itself, but you're getting their lip just that you have just barely a second to get it.
Okay. That sounds harder, but kinder.
Yeah, they don't really feel the same way we feel pain. They just know they're going forward or backward, and they're not feeling that thing the same way.
Now, have you ever gone fly fishing with Henry Winkler?
My husband taught Henry. I think he first took Henry Winkler fly fishing, or one of the first times. And Henry's been on the same river. We've all been on a fishing trip, and he's been in a boat on the same river. I have rowed a canoe with Henry Winkler in it. Henry and I have been in a canoe, but I have never been fly fishing with him side by side. We used to own a fly fishing ranch in West Yellowstone called the Fire Hole, and he came up to visit, and everybody went fly fishing, but I don't think I fished side by side with him.
What about your daughters or your grandkids? Are any of them interested in fly fishing?
They don't they don't care. My oldest daughter is really good, and she'd be like, Dad, there's a fish on my line again. So, they don't like it. It's not their thing. It's not their thing.
Well, I really now want a show with you and Henry Winkler fly fishing and solving political problems. Can you make that happen?
Yeah. All the political problems. Yeah. So we need to get rid of money in politics, and I don't know how that's going to happen.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
That would go a long way to fixing a lot of things.
Yeah.
How can people find you or support causes that you support?
They can always donate to Don't Get Purged. There's a donation button on there. Or they go to don'tgetpurged.org. We had millions of people through that site this year checking their status. There's a million things I support. Give to the Rape Foundation. I think right now the most important thing is we support our local newspapers. We support local journalists. We support libraries, librarians, teachers. We support institutions. Support your local. I would do all environmentalists, because the environment's there's going to be no regulations and probably no way to even test legally by the time they get through with this. So I would invest in those life straws and invest in water filters and stuff and air filters.
Wow. All right. Well, how do you keep hope?
There's always hope. Nothing's impossible. There's always hope. And I don't think people are going to take it. I don't think people are aware what they voted for. It was a worldwide throwing out of the incumbencies because of inflation. I think that's what it mainly was, this election. And eggs were high, and they don't really consider that democracy is going to be at stake. They didn't think that someone in another state having a problem with abortion, if abortion was legal in their state, they didn't care. Nobody thinks about that stuff until it affects them.
Yeah, it's hard to tell that story effectively.
Yeah, and there was also this big sense worldwide. It was a kind of a zeitgeist where people believed that other people were coming to their country and getting stuff they shouldn't have, and they resented it, even if they were living fairly well. It wasn't like we were living in poverty and someone else was, the propaganda would be the migrants are in 5-star hotels. That was crock, But that's what people believe, because we do not have the media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was a backlash from Me Too, which went too far.
And I think we still haven't shown that we can successfully elect a female president.
No. And we won't even nominate one for a couple of cycles now, which is stupid. It's stupid.
But, sadly, I've thought for a long time that the first female president will be a Republican, because Republicans...
but Republican women are contemptible.
I'm not...
You're just saying that's the way it is. I don't know.
I have met very few Republican women I respect, frankly.
Yeah, I think it will happen. I was hoping it would happen in my lifetime. I'm not as sure, but I'm
not so sure either, but I'll be happy if we keep democracy in my lifetime at this point.
Yeah, me too. Let's start there at least.
Let's start with that.
We'll start from there.
And, nothing's impossible. It could be, for all we know, there might be another woman nominated and elected. But right now, we have to see where the men were like, oh, we're losing our white privilege. As long as we're on this grievance thing and someone's taking stuff, someone having something is taking it away from me,
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was going to come with overpopulation, and we're here, and it came. We thought about that in the 80s. We thought about stuff like that.
Yeah.
Overpopulation and with global warming, whole populations are going to have to migrate with that. And so it won't just be war as an impetus for moving around. It'll be worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just basic survival.
Anyway, on that cheerful note.
On that cheerful note. Listen, it has been so great to talk to you.
It's been great talking.
It's been awesome to have you on the show. And
thank you.
An amazing 80s TV lady. And so I'm really glad.
Yeah, we really appreciate your time and your willingness to share with us and eventually with our listeners. Really, really admire what you're doing, what you've done in your career, and also what you've done politically.
It's an interesting conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
It has been. And I really appreciate your activism a lot.
Thank you.
And your sense of hope and giving people hope.
I do have a sense of hope.
Yeah.
Nothing's impossible.
Yeah. Me too. I think it's our job.
Absolutely nothing.
I think it's our job. If you have any privilege, it's your job to have hope.
That's right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's our job.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a great afternoon.
Have a good day.
You too. For our audiography today, you can find Heather Thomas on Twitter at Heather Thomas AF.
She is also on Blue Sky at heatherthomasaf.bsky.social.
And if you haven't already seen it, you can find the Fall Guy movie on Peacock TV for free if you're a subscriber. It can also be rented or bought on Amazon Prime Video, YouTube, Fandango, and FlixFling.
FlixFling? How fun!
FlixFling.
FlixFling. And the Fall Guy TV show is streaming on Amazon Prime Video. You can also purchase it at YouTube, Apple TV. You can also go to don'tgetpurged.org to make sure that you are not taken off the voter rolls. And for the organization Crew that Heather Thomas mentioned in the show, which is actually the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, you can go check them out at citizensforethics.org. They're a great organization.
So we come to the end of what I think is another fantastic episode. And we hope that 80s TV Ladies continues to bring you joy and laughter and lots of fabulous new and old shows to watch, all of which will lead us forward toward being amazing ladies of the 21st century.
Which I think Heather Thomas is.
I agree.